and we're back for part 2. Continuing on about the discussion of the pool of reciprocity, I just wanted to mention something else that goes along with that, and I think I may have mentioned this in some other videos, but just to point out again, you know, one thing that's difficult, and I see both sides of it, is interpreters, once they become certified, very often they stop attending deaf socials. And from their perspective, they're trying to draw a boundary that says, okay, I'm an interpreter, I'm afraid that if I go to this social that I may say something that's out of line or something that I got from an interpreted situation, or somebody may perceive that I got from an interpreted situation, so they may think I'm breaching confidentiality. I don't want to put myself in that predicament, and so henceforth I'm just going to not be there. And I get that. I definitely get that. But at the same time, I think that when you stop attending deaf socials and hanging out with deaf people after you become a certified interpreter, the perception is, you were attending the deaf socials until you got certified, until you could make a paycheck, and now that you all of a sudden are certified and making money off of us, now you're not really my friend? Now you're not going to come to the socials? I mean, I can see that perspective too. And so I definitely do attend socials. I'm very careful about what I say when I go to them. I remember I went to one, and it was so funny because I had literally interpreted for this one lady like a few days before the social. Like, I remembered her, it was for a job training or something like that. And so I go to this one social, and she sees me and she was like, I know you. And I was like, you know, I can't say, you know, oh yeah, I interpreted at your job last Tuesday or whatever. You know, I can't say that because then I'm divulging information from that. Whatever she wants to say about it is her business. She's the consumer. She can say anything she wants to. I can't talk about the scenario myself. I can't add in anything that hasn't already been brought out. And so she's looking at me and she's like, I know you. Where do I know you? And I was like, I don't know. You know, of course I do know. It was like 2 days ago. Come on, man. Anyway, but she kept thinking and she kept thinking. She was like, I know. And I was like, oh, thank goodness she remembers. She was like, you were at the social last month, weren't you? And I was like, maybe, you know. I wasn't going to argue with her. I was just like, you know, so anyway, it's kind of funny. But, you know, you will be at socials and people will say, oh yeah, Lael interpreted for me 2 years ago at such and such, or oh yeah, she interpreted for me last week at blah 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 blah. Now they want to talk about that, that's their business, but I'm not going to add into that conversation, because then I may accidentally, without realizing it, say something that they either didn't want to be said or that's perceived as being me breaching confidentiality, and so henceforth I'm really careful about that. But it doesn't prohibit me from still going to the socials, at least occasionally as my schedule allows, and trying to make sure that I connect with my deaf friends and hang out. Anyway, your book talks about the myth of neutrality. Oh, so true. You are always going to have an opinion about something. Now, granted, in some situations, it's not going to be a strong opinion, so it's really not going to be difficult for you to interpret one way or the other, or both sides. There are going to be other things that sometimes you're going to know you have a bias, and then there are going to be other times where you're not going to realize you have a bias until you're into it, or where you're going to support the deaf person more, or where you're going to support the hearing person more. You're going to be... being neutral is just a myth. I mean, the book's right. At some point you're probably going to feel like you're taking more of one side than the other, and the important thing in that situation is just to recognize that I'm doing it, and to attempt at all costs to still be at least visibly neutral, not making faces like, you know, or I don't know, just not showing your irritation or frustration or disbelief or any of those things, just trying not to add in your own bias. One of the main topics from this week that I really did want to discuss, because your book doesn't get into it too much, but I feel it's very, very important, and that's why I posted it on your discussion board, is the subject of vicarious trauma. Any kind of service profession that deals with any kind of serious situations, like especially emergency professions like police, fire, and EMT, those types of positions, anything where, or counseling, anything where you're dealing with really serious subject matter, you start to take on some of that stuff, you know, and it's difficult. Especially for us, because not only are we having to hear and experience the stuff, we're also having to become the victim and the person who is victimizing that person. We're having to take on all of these roles. You are effectively an actor when you're an interpreter, except not only do you have to act convincingly as one role, you have to act convincingly as both. And sometimes you just feel yucky afterwards. I mean, there's no, I hate to sound so childish, but there's really no other word for it. I mean, you just feel like icky after a situation, you know? I don't feel good after I have had to do phone sex on VRS. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't feel good after that. I don't feel good when I know that one or the other, because a consumer, either one of the consumers can take advantage of the other. It's not just hearing to deaf, it can be the other way too. I don't feel good about it when I'm knowingly interpreting something where I know someone's being taken advantage of. It's difficult, it's so difficult, and so you can start to take on some of the symptoms of that in yourself, you know, and so it's really good to have outlets for that, whether it's journaling, counseling, having a mentor who you share, still in a confidential basis, some information so that you can get some feedback on how to deal with some of this stuff. You know, just all kinds of outlets, and that's something that I want you to post on. There's a slew of things that you can do to keep yourself mentally healthy, physically healthy, because honestly that can even start to be pervasive into your physical health when you're psychologically that bad off. I know I used to be an EMT, and we had critical incident stress debriefings, CISDs, where we could go and talk to somebody about some of the stuff we were seeing, because it was pretty nasty stuff, you know. Military personnel, I would say almost, again, you can't say anything across the board, but most of my military students, when they come back from being overseas or wherever they were, they don't even realize that they have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, but a lot of them do. And I guarantee you, if you go online and you pull up PTSD and just do a simple inventory of, or questionnaire of what that encompasses, you'd be surprised to find out how many of you guys have dealt with that or are dealing with that. And again, PTSD and some of those types of depression and things, some of them can just be situational, so it may just be that you're dealing with that for a certain amount of time to get over something. Even something like a divorce or something can cause those types of symptoms, and it may be, again, symptomatic of that specific situation, but you can be dealing with that afterwards. And so henceforth we can be dealing with that after having to interpret that ugliness and that yuckiness and all of that. I know that after doing BRS for a while, oh my gosh, it drove me crazy to have to do customer service calls of my own. You know, when you're on hold for forever and arguing with people and going from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 customer service trying to get tech support for a deaf person or a hearing person on the phone, to go home and to have to make your own customer service calls just drives you crazy. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with it anymore, you know. And so that's something I've had to kind of get over. Anyway, I'm going to continue talking about one more topic for this chapter on the next video, and that's it. Thanks!